You've noticed that hiring managers ask you to do free labor to prove yourself. I have a unique perspective here as an industrial organizational psychologist because sometimes a work sample is really critical, but that's different from abusing free labor. So in my field, we do a lot of hiring and selection. We're the ones pushing for hiring people for skills that are actually needed to do the job and not just going with gut feelings. We love work samples, but we don't usually include them until somebody is going to be in at least a management position because it's very expensive to do well. That's not something that you send out to hundreds of people, even thousands these days, and you'll have time to review. That's not possible. It's usually in the selection system after you've interviewed people, you're down to like your last 5 candidates, and the exercise needs to be very close to what they'll do on the job, but it isn't something that you're asking them to do so the company gets free labor. A very popular version of this is the in-basket exercise. This is where you have people who are about to be, who are being considered for a management position, and you bring them in and you give them like a basket of scenarios written on paper, and you document how they are prioritizing the task. You ask them to solve how would you do these tasks, in what order, when, etc. This is to see how they manage their time, how they problem solve, and if they have the knowledge to solve those problems. But all of those scenarios will be very carefully selected based on what that job actually looks like. I don't think that's abusive. I think it's important and really becoming a lost, I would say art, but it's really science as well, because leadership does require additional skill sets. I'm not saying that it doesn't require knowledge of that industry, but it also requires these other skills that are often labeled soft skills. Now, where we run into abusive is when they're asking you to do things that they're going to sell later, and when it's like insane amounts of work. A legitimate job sample should take you 1 to 2 hours max. If it's something over that, that's a red flag. If it's a legitimate sample, it should be a hypothetical situation, because since you are not hired, you should not be privy to internal company information. That could be a security problem as well. If they're asking you to solve their problems for free, that's a red flag. So a question you can ask is this a real company problem or a mock? A legitimate work sample will be scored and then not sold or anything. A red flag is something they will use with future clients. You should ask them what happens to your sample when it's gone, or when you're through the selection system. And in a legitimate one, they should tell you that it's not paid, but it should be a relatively short ask. It's a red flag if they don't bring that up at all and it's extensive amounts of work. It also very much depends on the position. I have walked away when I was like early career from a receptionist job that wanted me to interview 3+ times and was very disorganized and chaotic. I was like, yeah, no, this ain't worth $14 an hour. But for a senior consultant position, which I did get, I had an hour and a half of interviews, one of which was situational, one was technical, and one was a case study, 30 minutes each back to back, and that was very reasonable. Now, I've also had, after that senior consultant position, I've also had for just freelance work where on top of a work sample, on top of an interview, they also wanted me to do a multi-hour case study interview. And after so many things, I was like, this isn't even for a full-time job. Like, this is a little ridiculous. And in those cases, you can say like, look, I'd be happy to show you a portfolio of my work or refer you to my past clients. You have to be really careful of knowing when to suss out, is this going to be worth it?